your kids. Join the musicians and Michelle, Gina. Turn this up and through your speakers. It's the music of music.
And good evening. We are the Muses Behind the Music, and I am your host, Michelle Fallon. Thank you all for joining us this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever it is, and whatever time it is, whatever time zone you are on. I'm just grateful for your presence and your support to the Muses Behind the Music. And so while we're talking about the support, why don't you go on ahead, invite somebody to watch us on our YouTube channel, The Muses Behind the Music, or our Facebook page, The Muses Behind the Music. And make sure you give Facebook access, because one thing that I love to do is to be able to interact with the audience members. I call you all the Muses, so affectionately given by my goddaughter, and that name will forever stick. Tonight, where I am in my time zone, it's the evening, and I have a dynamic ethnomusicologist, to which some of you, I'm sure, are asking, what the heck is an ethnomusicologist? And it's important that we really understand that, because they are vital to the survival of the culture of music of people all over the world. And we'll delve a little bit more into that when we welcome my guest. I'm so super proud of this sister, my friend, former member of Children of the Gospel Choir. So we'll talk a little bit with her about that too. Her name is Dr. Alisha Lola Jones. She is the associate professor in the Faculty of Music at the University of Cambridge in England, y'all. So she's on a different time zone joining us. That excites me. Thank you so much. A board member of the Society for Ethnomusicology, a member of the Strategic Planning Task Force for the American Musicology Society, and co-chair of the Music and Religion section of the American Academy of Religion. I'm just trying to understand how she has the time to do all of this, be the professor that she is, be the wife that she is. She's also a pastor. Her and her husband are both pastors. She is an author. She has written a book where we're going to talk about this a little bit tonight as well, called Flaming: The Peculiar Theopolitics of Fire and Desire in Black Male Gospel Performance. Yo, listen. The one thing I know is that an ethnomusicologist can put together some words for us. And I mean, just that in itself allowed me to feel like I need to know a little bit more about this book. And she's also written a new book that she's going to speak about on gastromusicology. Y'all see what I'm talking about? Gastromusicology. All right. And she is a fourth generation ordained preacher. I had shared that, her and her husband, on both sides in the Word of Faith and Pentecostal traditions. There is a little known, I'm going to call it the little known Black history fact, is that Dr. Alisha and her sister, the Reverend Angela Marie Jones, are co-owners of Paradise Media Group. And this is a Black woman-owned radio company with stations based in Oxford and Henderson, North Carolina. Yo, y'all, that is so dope. I mean, really, can you name all of the Black-owned radio stations on two hands? I bet you can't. But tonight, we're going to hear a little bit about that. Right now, she is residing out in England with her husband as they are building. Put a period after that. So without further ado, y'all, come on, help me welcome my friend, the ethnomusicologist, author, musician, all that good stuff, Dr. Alisha.
Hi, twin. How are you, twin?
Listen, look at this, y'all. We are twinning on all levels. From bling to shirt to glasses, it's happening. We're in one spirit. That's what it is.
Yes,
Hair.
yes,
Oh gosh,
yes.
in the hair.
And I was going to do the top knot. I was actually going to do that. I
This is
was.
not planned, y'all. This is just what happens. Hey, Dr. Andrews, he's on and he's saying, hello, my sister. Hey, Doc,
Hello.
I love you so very much. I love you so much. Alicia, thank you so much for being with us. I'm really excited about having you on the show. I've been trying to get you on the show
Yes,
for a
yes.
minute now, and life
Hey.
has done what life does. And so now you're out in England, and
Yes.
I just kind of want to jump in there. So Patrick D. McCoy just said, congratulations.
Hi.
I want to jump right in there and ask, how did you get to England while you're out here with us in the DMV?
Oh,
How did that take place?
listen, first of all, thank you so much, Maestra Fowlin, for the invitation. We have been trying to make it do what it do for a little bit, and I'm so excited to be in conversation with you. You are a sister's sister, a musician's musician, and I am just honored to be able to be in the number.
Oh,
Um,
thank you, sis. I'm glad you are. I'm glad you're here. I really
yeah.
am.
So England, I want to tell a story. Hello, hi. I want to, start off with something dramatic, like it was a dark and gloomy night, and it came
I
to
won't write the book.
right, right. But you
Right.
know what? I do have to shout out my husband, Reverend Calvin Taylor Skinner. Right before we got married, we checked in with each other. As I tell the story, he might tell it a little different. But I checked in with him and I asked him, are you still open to doing something abroad? I think I shared this with you. And he said, yeah, absolutely. Let's do something abroad. We agreed that we would do something at the beginning of our marriage. And it just so happened during the pandemic, a conversation began with Cambridge and a few other institutions.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, but Cambridge was in alignment with our vision. And perhaps a message, even in that, is that the vision wasn't about salary or amenities, it was about um, our culture,
Yeah.
what we wanted the cultural preservation journey to look like, or what was resonating with us in terms of the contour of what that story would look like as it unfolded. And all these things were added. Everything that
Yeah.
was not quite specific in terms of what arrangements would be. All those things have been added, and there's so much more to come. I'll be sharing with you specifically some things as they unfold in terms of this adventure. But it started with agreement with Calvin, and God did the rest. God did the rest.
Listen, right there, we could probably stay there on the word agreement and just switch it over to, how we deal in relationships, especially
Yes,
marriages, and talk about that one word, the
yes.
two become one. And that's that
Come on.
like-minded thing of becoming and being
Mhm,
able to allow each person to breathe and pursue their vision, and you know that yours is tied into it at the same
mhm.
time. So it's all cohesive. I mean, that thing
Yes.
is that's a beautiful word of description for it. And I always
Mhm.
believe when we pursue our passion, the provisions follow. You know,
Absolutely.
do it backwards and you run into some mud in the
Yeah,
process of it because it's the wrong agenda. So yeah, you gotta go where God is leading
absolutely.
all the
Absolutely.
time. I love that. And God was leading y'all to England. I mean, so many miles away. I love the spirit
Yes.
of like the generations that can just get up and go and not be afraid to
Yeah.
do that. I'm kind of old school and have set
Mhm,
myself ways of let me just be comfortable.
mhm,
My station is here, but I often wonder sometimes if I were more amenable
mhm.
to that possibility where that would lead. That's
Yeah.
it's a rhetorical thought. We won't get into that right now. But tell us, because one of the things I know a lot of people don't know is what really is an ethnomusicologist. What do you do, and how did you even get into that field?
Yeah. It is a frequently asked question, so it is normal. I anticipate it. And there are several ways that people describe it. Ethnomusicologist, we could say tonight, is a person who, like a musicologist, we study music, but we do so with an orientation to the people who make the music and the people who participate as listeners, patrons, producers,
Yeah,
impresarios. We think of the anthropological sorts of questions,
yeah.
and it can also involve the archive or the musical work. But often we like to keep the people, the human beings, involved in how we think about music, music making and production.
So you like research,
I
basically?
love I love research.
Yeah.
I love reading people. I love reading people.
I love reading people too, but I don't want to sit down and write nothing about it.
Yes, let me tell you, I love writing about people. I love teaching folks
Yeah,
how to, interpret what's going on in performance in ways that demonstrate my love for the culture,
yeah.
my respect for the culture, but then also the durability of the cultures that
All
can
right.
withstand uh, really rigorous analysis.
Oh,
Mhm.
woo! Yo, rigorous analysis of the cultures. Yo,
Yes,
that in
yes.
itself. Right about that. You were right about that. So, who or what became the inspiration for you that you said, because you're a musician, right? And what became that thing that you said, I don't want to pursue the whole performance aspect, but I want to make sure that music is directly involved in my life? Was it a person? Was it an event?
We are blessed in the DC area, this
Mhm.
Washingtonian colony of musicians, to
Yeah,
see myriad paths to music making and education. And definitely, I was afforded exposure to people who would be called ethnomusicologists, or now I know they are ethnomusicologists. I just didn't know the word
right,
growing up. And certainly through my exposure to organizations like the Washington Performing Arts Society at the time, Children of the Gospel, I was around a lot of ethnomusicologists. I just didn't know that term at that point. So
right.
people like Nolan Williams, Reverend Nolan Williams, who explored ethnomusicological coursework and research. He was someone who I watched as he composed new music, and I would see my cousin, now Reverend
Mhm.
Jamaica Jones Setzer,
Yeah.
debut his music, and I would look at his lyricism and composition, and see the thick theology at work.
Mm,
And I wanted to know, like, what was his training? People like Richard Smallwood, who's also a culture bearer in the line of ethnomusicologists.
mhm.
Um, and then, folks that hung around Howard,
Yeah,
I saw that they knew their stuff. Morgan State, when we would go down there were people who were doing ethnomusicology. They just might not have known the term for it. And now more and more folks from where we are connected use the term more readily. So I'm happy to be a part of naming that sort of culture bearing. Absolutely.
I mean, as you're naming these people, and someone had mentioned my good friend there, Jimmy Russell, and mentioned naming the peeps. As you're naming them, I would have never thought about placing them in that subject matter or the
Mhm.
category, but literally, as you speak, they are. ethnomusicologist. I mean, Nolan, it's funny as I am in this position at the Washington National Cathedral. And so I'm constantly doing research that, y'all, now don't tag me as that because I don't really enjoy research, but I'm digging up more and more Nolan's name to so many things from the Episcopalian faith. And that's what he did not come out of, but his presence is all over the place. And, you know, that's my really, really good friend. So it's an amazing thing of just doing a little bit of digging and seeing how the relationship of these people, I just want to call musicians, are really the researchers and are really the ones that are keeping this alive. So you talked a minute about COTG and, you know, COTG in the 90s, quite different than where we are today in 2022 going 23. That
I was a part of that 90s crew.
Okay. 90s crew with Tommy and Joyce and Evelyn, right? And guess what?
Ned Lewis.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you all had some dope directors and directresses, and you know, the founding of Children of the Gospel to me was just so crucial for the time that, you know, the Black church in itself was just beginning to spread the wings of having these mega churches, and it offers so much to the young people as Children of the Gospel did. You know, to have this platform where you love to sing, you love gospel music, you're going to go to venues that we didn't even have exposing gospel music before. What was your whole idea behind the gathering of being in it? Was it kind of like forced? Parents were like, I need you to be in this. You said, how'd that come about?
I am so thankful for what Eric Terrain envisioned when it was launched. I was there in the first class, if you will, or cohorts of Children of the Gospel in the middle school choir under the direction of Maestro Ned Lewis, who I love, who is such a sweetheart. But when he is on that there, listen, you will sing.
You will sing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hello.
Fierce. Yeah.
I remember making my way to, it might have been Dunbar, making my way to the early rehearsals on the weekend at Dunbar. And if I was a hair late, and I was not, I wanted to be there. The door would be locked. And we understood what that meant. Go home. Go home. You were not ready.
You know what? I gotta jump you right there. I miss that tradition. And you know, because and that's not of anyone's fault of my own. I'm about to reinstitute that tradition because what it because what it teaches you is discipline and timeliness to appreciate, well, one, other people's time and energy and effort, and that you have to show up prepared. And part of your preparedness is your punctuality to know what is going on. So absolutely. I love that. And I'm going to let them know you told me to bring it back on.
Listen, I'll blame it on institutional memory. And it's important.
Yes.
I think for educators, one thing before I respond to your question about my interest into COTG, I do want to say that it's important as educators for us to consider in our pedagogy, I believe, institutional memory, that we should keep folks in the conversation who can tell us the lived experiences of organizations in yesteryear. And I'm passionate about it. As a person who has been alumni president for various organizations, it means something to see a reflection of oneself as we learn. But Children of the Gospel, which I actually write about in my book, I wrote about how Children of the Gospel emerged in the 90s during the crack pandemic. DC was described as the murder capital of the United States, these really extreme perceptions, negative perceptions of DC. And in the midst of that, there was the emergence of several choirs around the city. It was a sport.
Yes.
And I, having just moved out to Virginia with my family, my little sister and my parents, COTG was my lifeline to Blackness. We were
Yeah.
out in Virginia.
I like that. The lifeline to Blackness.
Listen,
Yes.
and the only Black family in the neighborhood. So when it was time to go and get up early to go to choir rehearsal, not just at my home church in DC, but Children of the Gospel, I was so excited because it was like 500 really fabulous teens who loved to learn the choreography with Miss Neal, who got to work with the best directors in the city and recording artists. Like my first year, we had Richard Smallwood, and he taught us, what's that song? Shine your light on the world that's lost its way. Bring back the sun.
You gotta say it. Come on. Come on.
That was my jam. And he sang it. He sang all the parts. I was just like, who is this individual?
Yeah.
And it was worth the drive. It was worth the drive. And so it was probably my first audition. And then shortly after that, I auditioned for, organizations like Duke Ellington, and so on. But I will tell you that the people that I met in COTG, we collaborate with each other to this day. I write recommendations for folks for various opportunities who were my peers in those spaces and who may not be professors, but they are noteworthy artists and residents. Some of these individuals we now see on various A-house stages. The music director for Mariah Carey was a COTG person, would get there early for rehearsal and be playing the piano. And now I see this crazy? Daniel Moore, out here doing the daggone thing. My sister is out here as a recording artist. And so this public arts education,
yes,
I tell folks all the time, if you want to learn about Black music, you got to go through the Black church, regardless of the faith tradition of the person you're researching in Black music. You got to go through the Black church, and definitely through choral participation, because so much is transferred through that.
Absolutely. I think the extra thing that was important to me with COTG, not just for learning about the history of Black music, because that is forever so very important, but being able to teach the young people about music, period, and about this art form that helped to shape and change what America is then, now, and will be, and why it's relevant, and that we need to keep understanding how we fit into it. I mean, all of the music that you listen to today, it has come out somewhere of the church or the blues or jazz, and you have to understand how it all interrelates. And so that's what was so important, that we build this curriculum so that they're becoming well-rounded musicians. And I also have this little thorn in my side, that I want gospel musicians to be whole musicians,
Absolutely.
like, don't just, the blessing is in the ear, but it's also in the eyes. Learn how to read and learn how to write it, and learn what you're seeing. All of those wonderful components to it. As we're about to broach the 30th anniversary, we need to pull on people like you who will, and you continue to be, because I've seen it, such a strong force and support for COTG and the continuing mission that WPA has for Children of the Gospel, and the direction that we're going in. So we're going to be pulling on you,
please.
Alisha, as we move towards it, because I know that you are still in great connection with so many people who are out there. You mentioned your book, And I want to touch on this for a minute because I need to know what drew you. I just want to know when I see titles of restaurants, right? The names of restaurants. I always want to go to the owners and ask them, how'd you come up with this? And I mean, or titles of like some of the rock bands that are out here. How'd y'all, like, where did you get this? So what drove you into, I need to write a book about flaming? And it starts with a question. Like, are we referring to the flaming of what we used to refer to many of gay men in the Black church? And just talk a little bit because I'll have a plethora of questions. With that. How did it come about?
See, this is the advantage of being a researcher who has had a career in as a musician, right? Because
Right.
we can ask questions with particular insights as to the inner workings of things. And when I started graduate school, I kept going to office hours and asking my mentors, how can I talk about these inside jokes in my community? This nonverbal communication that happens when people talk about uh, um, desires to be married, but yet they have a feminine masculinity. I don't use the term effeminacy. I think I could explain that if you want, but I use the term feminine masculinity. They have a feminine masculinity that prompts people to raise a brow or look to the side, or people who speak of no longer being queer. Why is it that there are these grumblings and moans when people talk about these things? And or people who are really, really demonstrative. Why is it that there are these extra conversations that happen beyond their worship leadership or their recording projects? And so the title "Flaming" is my effort as a person who identifies as a cisgender heterosexual woman who loves men, who is attracted to men as my brothers, but I'm also married to a whole Black man. Um, so there's the fraternal love, and then there's
Right.
eros.
Oh Lord, make it plain.
Listen. But how do I signal out the gate that I do not presume entitlement or ownership to this domain? I'm just asking and responding to the questions. I needed a way to show that I was not a card carrying expert, and I don't think I can be. I'm not a man. I'm not a queer in any sense of that term. So, well, I think we all have a little bit of social queerness or peculiarity. Um, but at any rate, I wanted to signal immediately um, the connotations of the term you mentioned, flaming, to refer
Yes.
to someone who demonstrates queer potential. I wanted to also gesture to that Pentecostalism, the flame of those who were speaking in other tongues in that upper room, right? Or the flame that occurs when someone is singed by being lit up when someone responds to their ridicule and judgment. So there's like a fourfold. I
Yes.
gave you but there are fourfold. It's a fourfold way that I address this idea of flaming, and of course we can't leave out fire, the fire and desire, the love, the attraction. Love you, my brother. And we can't leave out the fire and desire that is stirred up when we are activated through real worship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, just that in itself, because I have to be honest that this has always been a book that I have wanted to place my hands on and have yet to do so. But just the title in itself, specifically about, when we start talking about Black male gospel performance, because so much has happened in the industry. I don't know if you remember a time when Kirk Franklin came out in a performance in a kilt.
Yeah.
And the world, the Black church, was in an uproar about what was happening to him. Would that conversation have fit into your book?
Yeah, absolutely. He's, I believe, in chapter 7
Okay,
in
have
the
a
book.
chapter for Kirk. Go ahead.
Yeah. I place him, and I have my little copy here.
Oh, yes.
I place him in conversation with B. Slade, who in my interviews with B. Slade, he talked about his friendship with people like Ty Tribbett and Kirk Franklin, and frankly, the ways in which he was disappointed in the quality of their friendship as he let us into his life as an openly queer man. But yeah, Kirk Franklin, I wish I had more time to deal with the Kirk Franklin situation. But I will say this, I do engage his book, Church Boy. Church boy, choir boy, mama's boy are terms that have been placed on men or people who were born male at birth, who find themselves in devoted church choral participation and close to mother figures in their life. These are terms that are diminutive, and I do question even those terms. What are we really saying about men who love to worship God vocally in spaces that are overwhelmingly represented by women's participation, the backbone financially of the gospel music industry, and our churches. So I deal with these critiques of the feminization of the church, while also talking about, these ideas of manhood that manifest in our language. Since we're hovering here, I mentioned in passing, for example, the term effeminacy.
Yeah.
I typically, when I lecture, and there are lectures online from public lectures, and I'm always doing, workshops around topics like musical masculinities. Oh, my little sweaters is shedding. But effeminacy is a term I want to leave with your audience, that we should really revisit our usage of it, particularly as women. In the same way we are mindful of issues like internalized racism, we can also internalize misogyny or misogynoir, in the sense that effeminacy was a term used to describe feminine masculine individuals in the 20th century, but in colonialism, during enslavement, effeminacy was used to describe our race as the lady of the races. It was a way to diminish our stature, and to emasculate us as a group of people that were understood to be people to be subjugated. And so when we use the term effeminacy, we are participating in a racist past, a colonial past. And as women, what does it mean when we actually participate in making fun of or chastising men who resemble women? Why is that? Why would we actually take on that as something to be judged by, when we as women overrepresent as intercessors, as patrons of the arts and of faith? We are the ones that have made $1 out of 15 cents. Why wouldn't we want our men to be gracious? We talk a lot about toxic masculinity.
I don't know if it's that we don't want our men to be gracious, but I definitely think that there is this there's more of men who are acting a particular way in order that rather than just being. You know, you're cultured, you're young, you're in a single family household and you're being raised by grandma, your auntie, your mother, and it's all women who are there. There are most definitely cultural nuances that you're going to be reared with that you don't even know as a young man, and that you start acting. I think this is where the word effeminate, really was brought on, because that's all that they know, saw and grew. And I do think that there are also those men who just feel like when they tag on, knowing I am a gay man, that they have to be a certain way. I don't know if I want to ask them to, that makes me feel as a woman proud.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think so. For me.
But as an anthropologist of music, though, I realize some of the folks who are the most openly gay don't even have a feminine masculinity. Some of the folks.
But it's it's your effeminate masculinity that I'm trying to embrace the two terms coming together.
Yeah, and conversely, some might have used terms like butch to describe a masculine femininity,
right?
But the combination gives us the continuum, because often folks navigate social mores in the performance of hetero presentation, for example, in a way that, not that we need to know a person's behavior, that but I have seen people actually vouch for their pastors' sexual behavior on the strength of how hyper masculine they are. Case in point, Bishop Eddie Long.
Yes, very, very true.
So, yeah, and I've also seen feminine masculine men who have had fathers in their single parent home. The monolith, we should always be nervous about an absolute anticipation of how people respond to their context.
Yeah, that's good. That's so heavy. I mean,
it's just more interesting to me to see all the variables.
Yeah,
it's more interesting to me.
I'm gonna definitely be ruminating on your whole, bridging of these two effeminate masculinity, because I get it when you say that there is this flow that goes, this ebb and flow. That's deep, sis. I'll come back to you in a couple days and we'll talk about.
Can I give you one example?
Yes.
One of my most famous portions of the book, that was an article before it was a chapter, is entitled "Pole Dancing for Jesus," and it's about a man who worships God using the pole. Now, we talked about choreography in Children of the Gospel. Liturgical dance, though it is widely celebrated, dancing. Yeah.
You know you are pushing it with the church folk when you talk about.
I love it.
I love it too. I love it too. I'm so sorry.
Listen, God has called me to a teaching ministry. God gave some apostles, some I love to teach.
Yes.
So with the pole dancing for Jesus, there is a young man who uses pole fitness. Oh, thank you. Who uses pole fitness in order to worship God. Pole fitness is an entire sport.
Yes, it is.
And this person, yes, and it's hard. It is hard. And in my field work, when I went out into the field to research this, I saw a lot of women in there with their church t-shirts on, learning how to do pole fitness. So again, forget what you heard.
Listen,
Baptist,
let me tell y'all.
Baptist convention t-shirt.
Listen, I got these church going folk up here right now who are talking about hello, maestro. Listen, I did pole dancing. I did, yeah, whatever as a fitness. I only did 2 classes because the amount of pain that I was in, I guess I was praising Jesus because I was like, Lord help me.
Yes.
But yet, no, it is no joke. And this is the most interesting part. I love how, hey, whatever you use, who am I to say that man was not given his ultimate praise to God?
Well, listen, but what I do in the work is not only address, how Washington Post, Huffington Post did coverage of Tavon. I interviewed him, and he's a librarian by day, a pole fitness instructor by night. And my theological hat, I went to seminary, right? So I looked to see if there was a genealogy of using the pole for a holy purpose. And there is. There is a genealogy, friends. And there's a genealogy for male usage. Huh? So who do we presume is supposed to be on the pole is the question.
Mercy. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Very, very, very. Okay. We gonna speak with that one of these days. I'm telling you, that's amazing. Let me switch over for a second. I always, you and we're big on youth, and one of the things that I always want these young people who I am responsible for, I want them to utilize their gift and make sure that they are speaking to the conditions of what's happening in their community, in the world, in society. It is very crucial. When Trayvon Martin happened, George Floyd, we were online, and I wanted them to use their voice to speak out. Nina Simone spoke about that as an artist, like, what, basically paraphrasing, what else are you supposed to do but to use your art and make sure you are speaking to these conditions? What do you, as an ethnomusicologist, as a musician, and it's very evident because you're writing books and you're speaking about it, but in the broad spectrum of community and social justice, how are you motivating the masses of young people and speaking into them and inspiring them to utilize their voice, not necessarily as musicians, but whatever their voice is? Maybe it's the writing of the pen, whatever their voice is. How do you do that?
Oh, well, I have several points to respond to that particular question. I think it's important for me to show up as my entire self, to code switch, to use vernacular, to equip my students to know how to deal with Dr. Jones, Reverend Dr. Jones, sometimes in certain settings. And then Keisha, I need for them to understand Keisha in the same way they understand Dr. Jones. Keisha being the person who does not have a faculty card, but who can give you just as much wisdom, who may not have sat in these hollowed halls, but who can get you together in physics in the same way that they can get you together in terms of the latest trends, that these individuals who may seem like the common man, my job is to teach you how to listen to everyday life and to performance culture. And so that's a huge part of my pedagogy, connecting everyday life to performance culture. I do lectures, workshops on issues like, law enforcement and music. I have a doctoral student right now, or a graduate student right now, who is thinking through hip hop in what we have called the Middle East. I have have a few Muslim students who are doing hip hop. It's very interesting. And just understanding the griot tradition. So equipping them with the cultural, oh man, you know, I'm gonna want to sit here and read the
Yeah, no,
yes.
by
Oh,
all
we gotta
means,
talk about
that's important. Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But equipping them with the griot, the understandings of what the griot is, the praised storyteller, equipping them with those models of the aesthetics of the philosophy so that they can know how to show up in the world. I do want to say that as I talk about everyday life and performance, I do function as a griot. I work with
Mm-hmm.
organizations and just give them the stories that I am bathed in every day as I do all of this thick reading and analysis. For example, when people ask me, you know, what is the sound of social justice? And
Oh, I like
is
that.
there any is there music to social justice?
Mm,
I retort that it has never left. The
mm,
sound of social justice has never left. It is that it is rather that we um, are seeing the need to tell our stories. And one of my favorite stories to tell that's social justice related, and I'm eager to tell you because of who you work with at the National Cathedral and with WPA, is this story of it was at the turn of the century, right, where there was a person who was walking in a garden. And as they were walking in the garden, they saw a gathering of people in the garden. And as they approached, they heard these people singing.
mm.
And as they got closer, they were able to make out what these gathered folks were singing. The gathering was singing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. And as they got closer, they noticed that the people who were gathered were surrounding a tomb.
Mm,
And there in the ground laid their teacher, who had taught them how to read and write despite Jim Crow and the threat of being murdered or jailed for teaching them that to be able to sing their ABCs was their prayer of thanksgiving for the
Jesus.
risk that the person did in order to make sure that they could run on. And so, what would it mean if we understood our ABCs as both a prayer, as the rudiments, and as social justice? What if we began to have our children of the gospel open up in Kennedy Center singing ABCs with this story, knowing just how much they were acknowledging the ancestors' sacrifice? Do we not remember that to know the ABCs could have been punishable by death?
My God.
And for them to be able to sing it today so freely is justice at work. So the social justice sung in everyday life is around us. We just need folks, our culture bearers, to be able to tell us the stories of how we got over.
Girl. Jesus, have mercy. Over here, like my whole body is just like in
Mhm.
goosebumps and like shivering because that was so powerful. And like I'm in a revelatory moment right now. You just unleashed so many thoughts and emotions that I would have never considered. It let me think about Sweet Honey in the Rock years ago. Years ago in the early 2000s, we did something with Sweet Honey in the Rock, COTG, and they wrote an ABC song, right? And
Mm.
what Because now as I'm hearing it in my head, because it went through the whole alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And it was just so beautiful the way that they had put it together, not the typical ABC, but the last lines were, they tell you what you need to know about our world community. I never got it. I just loved the melody and the harmonies of what they were doing. It was jazzy, but it had so much more than that. I mean, you could hear the world experience. You could hear the Black experience. You could hear the African experience in this one song as you just, and it was a prayer. Oh my good Lord, have mercy. My life has changed. My life has changed. I mean, I didn't even know, I didn't even know what to say. Girl, thank you for that. That's going to carry with me for forever. I'm going to share that story with every single young person that I come in contact with, and just there's so much to it. That is just amazing. My God, have mercy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my goodness, have mercy. Yeah. Thank yous, and Emery Andrews said it was powerful, and that it was. I'm looking at the time, and I just feel like sometimes, like when you're in church and the music is so good, the pastor doesn't need to get up and preach. One of them moments, like you just gave a whole entire sermon and there ain't nothing else left to say, really. Like, I just want people to kind of sit in on that and take that away with them. As a matter of fact, here is the question that I would ask you, that I'm asking you to ask our audience a question from that beautiful story that you just shared, the beautiful prayer that you just shared, or give them a message to carry them into what they can do to continue the message. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the phrases that has been carrying Calvin and I through this journey in the UK, particularly as we have known it to be a launching, is the power of an enthusiastic yes. And I think it's important for those of us who lead worship to really meditate on our yes, Lord, yes. Largely because an enthusiastic yes is an activator like I've never seen before in my life. And when you can come in agreement with a bestie, a friend, a sister, or a brother with an enthusiastic yes, the level of magnetism and resources that are drawn to that agreement and that yes. If I had the time, I would actually get into the science of it. Because as you know, we made this leap. So many people said, "Oh, Alisha, so far away, we would never see you," or "It's time for you to focus on this and that and settle down," or just so many no's, so many enthusiastic no's. But as soon as we gave our enthusiastic yes, oh yes, oh, we have no idea this detail, absolutely not. But all we know is this is where we're supposed to be. And as soon as we kept saying the yes, the questions were answered exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we could ask or think. When we had questions about resources, then patrons popped up. We didn't campaign. We did not campaign. They popped up. And I think a worshipful life, an enthusiastic, a God-filled life, because to talk about enthusiasm is a welcoming posture of the divine, a infilling of the divine. When you enthusiastically respond to the call, you respond to the prompt, I am telling you, the faithfulness of God becomes apparent.
Yeah.
walk into the classroom and to see my Afro-British students who have yet to have, I'm the first person of African ancestry to teach at Oxford or Cambridge,
Come
to
on.
see them rejoice.
Yes.
Nothing but God. It's
Yeah.
nothing but God. And
Yeah.
then know that when I show up in the classroom, that my community knows they have a friend in the classroom. That is when I talk with respect to my elders. I talk with respect to the tradition and our dignity. To know that that enthusiastic yes has meant a easier flow of the tradition and a representation and ambassadorship. I want us to know that popular culture will have us cloaked in unbelief, so much so that we will miss
Yes.
the miracles in everyday life.
My God.
And I'm
Yeah.
seeing miracles. I'm seeing goodness and mercy.
Woo.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing signs and wonders.
Yeah.
And in that enthusiastic yes, there becomes a difficulty in explaining the how. In fact, my last point is forget about the how. When I take my focus off the how and just
Mhm.
yes, the story gets even more juicier. Even the script, I can't even make it up. Can't even make it up.
Right. Right.
Release the how. Give the enthusiastic yes. And I'm trying to tell you, goodness, mercy, signs, wonders, miracles, they become a part of your life. They really do.
Sister, I just, whew, I am so full. I'm so blessed right now. I feel just, before I start my show, most people don't know unless, you're a guest on the show. I always pray. And I said, if it's always, if but for one, God, I
Mhm.
am the one. I'm the
Mhm.
I'm the one right now. I feel
Mhm.
reinvigorated. I feel re-energized. I feel
Mhm.
repurposed in thought. I am
Mhm.
just, I'm going to be just chewing on this.
Mhm.
I always watch all of my shows again. I'm gonna watch this again several times over because I know that there are things that I need to digest within so that I can see where is next. What's next? I
Mhm.
love and appreciate you. I love your ministry
Love you too. Thank you.
too. I love your ministry, the work that you are doing. I am godly proud of you as a Black woman who is
Mhm.
out here just doing what the Creator has called you to do. You are the first. I need you to say that again because I don't want nobody to slight this. The first
Mhm.
African descent
Mhm. Mhm.
to at
Mhm.
Cambridge
Mhm.
University in England. Y'all hear
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
Come on, come on, come on. What a blessing. What a dynamic
Mhm.
task the Creator has placed into your hands. Ooh, you got it, girl. Go
Mhm.
ahead. I'm just
Listen,
going to pray for you on
and
your
I'm
journey.
so grateful for those who have taught at these institutions as postdocs, as researchers. I to your point, I do want to say that I'm a tenured person at this institution,
Come
and
on.
that means there's an institutional commitment to my presence there. And there's some other things that are being set into motion in terms of support and resources that I'll be talking with you privately about
Yeah.
and our community. And again, that God would be glorified, that God would be glorified.
Whew.
Mhm.
Y'all, I don't know about you, but I am full tonight. I am so full. I feel like I went to church, and I did. I went to church right here, right now. I thank you so much, Dr. Alisha Lola Jones. Um, Praising God for you. I really am. Thank you to all of you who are watching, who will watch. And, may you pull whatever nugget is there for you to be inspired by and that you share it with others. I'm so looking forward to the many conversations that you and I are about to have.
Yes.
The very, very near future. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My body is filled with goosebumps. Filled with goosebumps. God be praised. God be praised. All my muses, until the next time, peace and blessings.